16 teams, 1 international tournament. It has a lot of stuff to keep track of. Players, stats, records, recent results, expectations, and the name of the city it's in, which we are all going to mispronounce multiple times. But because it's a major and because I love talking narratively about competitions like this, I found an easier way to break it down. I found one word to describe the journey for each team. There's a lot of things riding on this major, including implications for the 2023 Six Invitational and tons of factors to consider for each one, but this is the way that I'm approaching each team in Jönköping. Let's begin with BDS, for whom I chose renewal. 2022 wasn't exactly BDS's year, depending on who you ask. Exceptional circumstances took them out of SI, they bowed out of the Charlotte major early, and they didn't even qualify for the Berlin major. But then they went to Saudi Arabia and won the Gamers 8 tournament, which made everyone wonder if they were actually going to make roster changes after all. But then enter Leak Effect, a gunner from the French trenches who's helped catapult BDS back up the standings. They've basically just put a new engine in the car, and they've already won a tournament in Japan in between stage 3 and now. They look as refreshed and as hungry as they've ever been to win a title. For Black Dragons, it's Genesis. Brazil keeps producing teams with tons of potential seemingly every few months. For Black Dragons, the org, they haven't been doing events since SI 2018. But for Black Dragons, the team, it's all fresh faces to the international stage, except for Ion. 2 years ago, leaving FaZe Clan looked like the death knell for his career, but a ton of grinding and finding the right young puzzle pieces has put him and these 4 guys back into the international picture. Brazilian teams at their first events historically don't do that well, but BD are looking to crash that party in Group A and get as many points for SI as they can in order to get to the closed qualifier for the Six Invitational. For CYCLOPS, it's refusal. They won't change their roster, they won't stop torching APAC North, and they won't ever say die. CAG have persisted with the same 5 players for almost 3 years, yet have never placed any higher than 9th, 10th at any event they've qualified for. They seem like they have trust in their formula, and to be fair, they wouldn't be in Sweden at all if they hadn't adapted with the times. But being tenacious can only get you so far. They're trying to prove to the world that this team they've had since 2019 can actually make some international progress. And if they do well enough, there still is a chance that they can qualify for the Six Invitational because they did attend the Charlotte Major earlier in the year. There's something to this, but they really have yet to show the world exactly what they're made of. For Direwolves, it's anticipation. It's been a good year for DW by APAC South standards. They made it to the Charlotte Major and they qualified for that major without losing a map. The same thing has happened in stage 3 for them to get to Jonkoping, and they even added a devilish Chinese fragger named Reaps to give them an even bigger boost. But the problem is APAC South itself. It's always been a mixed bag of talent, and the only notable thing that the region's produced in a long time is Elevate. And they're not even going to this event. Going undefeated in an APAC South stage is great, but is that enough reason to put faith in the Taiwanese? A lot of people would say no. For Fury, it's overrun. Fury are also from APAC South, but they didn't have nearly as smooth of a road to get here, which gave them the 4th seed in the group draw. That draw put them with BDS, Spacestation, and W7M. Needless to say, there isn't any expectation that they will survive, and they already can't qualify for SI even if they were to win this major, but just getting here is already the biggest accomplishment of their careers. And because upsets are a thing, and they usually come where we least expect it, if Fury can get an upset win over any of the teams in their group, it should be treated as a huge deal. Dropping any points to Fury in this group should be looked at as a death sentence for the teams that unfortunately maybe do that, and these Thai lads should be considered the Grim Reapers. For FaZe Clan, it's vendetta. Let's just recap the last 12 months for FaZe. Winners of the Sweden Major, 3rd place at SI this year, caught the SI playoffs bug and couldn't make Charlotte, like TSM and plenty of other teams, but then roar back for Berlin and miss out on winning it by 1 round.
Yesterday they took the crown from LA. Today they take the kingdom of Latam.
Now, it's personal. It's not that they're looking to exact vengeance on anyone in particular, just on every other team in this tournament. They're still placing really well in Brazil. They have a teammate that just got nominated for Esports Player of the Year. Go vote, by the way. And they're going to have this massive chip on their shoulder from how their run in Berlin finished. If they don't cleave their way through Group D and through the playoffs, it's going to be a crazy turn of events. For Heroic, it's maturation. 2 roster changes is usually a sign that a team is looking to rebuild, and sometimes it's going to take a couple months to do that. But Heroic's results have come a lot faster than anticipated. The previous system Heroic had got them to Charlotte earlier in the year, but Joom and Mello have surprised everyone early by getting them to a major already, which is a big accomplishment by itself. But with a move this big, any team considering itself a serious contender will need to go through hardship and conflict before it can mature into a world-dominating beast. So even if Heroic don't manage that much in Jönköping, it's for the good of developing themselves into something greater. For MNM, it's underestimation. Nobody talks about this team as much as they should. Unless you're the British. They are always overlooked for teams with bigger names, yet they're heading to their 3rd tournament of 2022 by staying competitive in the heat of a crazy EUL Stage 3. But they themselves are looking to prove that they're more than just this mid-table team from Europe, and it feels like that's the same case with them at every event, because their performances at international events are mostly forgettable. The more they put themselves on the map with a bigger spotlight, then the more that the name MNM is actually going to stick with people as a potential contender. For Mirage, it's incomprehension. Like, how the hell did this happen? They had 2 consecutive stages of being the laughingstock of the NAL, had a combined 4 wins between March and July, and suddenly not only do they dig themselves out of dead last, but they qualify for a LAN? Safe to say, this wasn't supposed to happen, and everybody in the league underestimated the sheer firepower this team would bring to the table after their revamp. But even as much as this doesn't make sense, everybody's expectations do. This is as far as they'll go. Getting past this point should be impossible for them because there's only so much disbelief that one can have about an underdog's upward trajectory. For SANDBOX, it's vindication. Everybody kept talking about Korean Siege a lot more in the last year, but almost all of it was about Damwon Kia, and rightfully so, but they're not at this major, and they did pretty dreadfully at the last one. Meanwhile, SANDBOX have risen up to take the Korean crown from their heads, at least for right now, and they're looking to make the most of that opportunity. They qualified for Berlin this year, but they didn't really look so hot there. So it's not just vindication that they've won over Damwon temporarily, but vindication that they seek, and they're looking to take the lessons from Germany into their 2nd straight event, which is something not even Damwon can say this year. For the Soniqs, it's reinvention. Everyone knew this is Super's team for years and years, and now after his retirement, everyone began wondering if they'd be able to recover and reconstruct themselves into something new. Long story short, they have, and it's off the backs of the efforts of Geo and Gunnar into a new-look Soniqs. It's not nearly the same team as before, but the undeniable skill of its fraggers and the speed at which they can move still makes them formidable. But at every major they've been to in the team's history, they've failed to make it out of the group stage. They'll get a good test in Jönköping, but similar to Heroic, if they don't advance further than groups, it's all going to be a part of the reinvention process for them. But they need as many SI points as they can because they're on the cusp of qualifying, so you take your bet about what result would be better for them. For Spacestation, it's activation. SSG sat mostly dormant for this year, nearly qualifying for the Charlotte Major, but then bottom scoring out in Stage 2, which left them off of any major lists for the whole season so far. But adding Yeti into the mix for Stage 3 suddenly felt like it was a volcano blowing its top, giving a team that has shown glimmers of hope all year some much-needed consistency. They nearly even took the 1st seed coming into Jonkoping, and they did it without needing to dip into the well of young, unproven talent to do it. This could be the best that SSG has looked since their SI 2020 campaign, but if they want to qualify for 2023, they'll need to keep the speed boost going for as long and as hard as they possibly can. For Team Liquid, it's rejuvenation. This has been a weird 2022 for Liquid because suddenly their status as a Brazilian juggernaut has been called into question. They didn't exactly run the table in any stage this year, and they didn't even qualify for Berlin. But something in Stage 3 changed. Ask suddenly went full beast mode alongside Paulu, and Lagonis' addition seems like it's already turning Liquid into a super team, but not with that stigma, one that actually has legitimacy and the potential to go the distance. Whatever the case, there seems to be a new energy to this team that just straight up didn't exist before. And if they want to qualify for SI, they're going to need to ride this wave until it crashes into the shore. For TSM, it's resurrection. It's been said, but it bears repeating. The 6 months after TSM's SI win were the worst 6 months of any team who'd ever won SI in Siege's history. It was like they disappeared completely after lifting the hammer, and that's the worst thing that a world champion team can do. They already cannot qualify for SI next year, But there still is something that they can do. If they pick up enough points at this major, then they get to skip the open portion of the SI qualifier and head straight to closed, which would mean they risk a lot less if they want to have another chance to run it back again for the second consecutive year. And with Gasher and Snake providing communication stability that they've been lacking for most of this year, they honestly really have a chance to do that. But their fate also isn't really in their hands for that. If they truly want to rise from the dead, it'll need to be by committing 110% to this major and not holding anything back. And for the last two teams on this list, there's something special about both of them. Wolves and W7M are the only two teams that have qualified for all three majors in 2022. That's impressive as fuck, considering they had to place high enough to make it to the major, travel and play in it, come back, and then immediately reset to do that whole loop all over again. But their words are a little bit different from each other. For Wolves, it's persistence. They're always present, they're always a threat, and for 2 straight EUL stages, they've never gone away because they've been first place. Internationally, they've yet to still really make a mark, but they've been steadily improving at majors as this year goes on. They don't really strike a lot of fear like a lot of other teams do on this stage, but they do persevere through anything, and the second you start to underestimate them, you're bound to lose everything. But for W7M, I picked doggedness. There's a hunger, like a crazy, deep-seated passion that feels like it hasn't let up from this team all year long. When W7M qualified for Charlotte, it felt like that was their event to win. But then they got handed a massive handicap by having to play the event from Mexico instead. That just pissed them off, and they were really close to winning the Berlin major, but then got tripped up by FaZe. Now, they're the current Copa Elite 6 champions, and they're fueled by a ton of experience from Julio. So if there was ever a time to capitalize on this rage and this all-consuming, insatiable need to win, it's at the Jönköping major. So, you know what's coming next. Because we've got a major coming up, and it's only about a week or so away, we have a little bit more major preview content coming up. And yes, that does mean predictions. If there's anything else about storylines that you thought was interesting about the teams coming into this event, leave them in the comments because I'm curious about your specific takes on the way that you're interpreting this major. And stay tuned for any of that prediction stuff. So hit up my YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. I forgot my own outro. That's kind of embarrassing. But yeah, follow all the social networks. And I'll see you later. Peace.